Hey fam, and welcome to the Happily Ever Active podcast, powered by Fit for the Magic, where Disney magic meets health and wellness. I'm Stephen Kabibi, your friendly personal healthcare companion, and I help travelers like you train for your next trip like it's an endurance event so that you can walk more, feel strong in your body, and come home feeling energized instead of wrecked. Today, I'm sitting down with Jeremy Stein of the Main Street Magic podcast to talk about something that might completely change the way you think about your next Disney trip. That is, the difference between using Disney as an escape versus using it as a real, genuine reset. We get into what burnout is actually costing you beyond just tired feet, and why the moments you'll remember most from your trip are almost never the ones that you even planned for. If you've ever come home from Disney feeling more drained than you left, trust me, you don't want to skip this episode. Find everything, including my pocketbook guide, Disney Ready, your pain-free park survival guide, over at fitforthemagic.com. And if you learned something useful on this episode, please share the show and tell a friend. Okay, here we go. Jeremy, welcome to the podcast. I've been listening and following you for a while after meeting you at Lou Mangello's Momentum weekend. And for my listeners that are new to you and everything that you do at Main Street Magic, who are you and what exactly is Main Street Magic?
Yeah, man, I'm so glad to be here. First of all, you were definitely one of those folks that I connected with at Momentum and just wanted to spend more time with. So I'm so thankful to be here. I'm Jeremy Stein. I am one half of the Main Street Magic podcast. The other half is my wife, Rhonda. And Main Street Magic, we started back in August of 2017, kind of a little bit out of a necessity for our friends, our family, our neighbors who were constantly asking us about Disney because we had become pass holders. We started this trend of going every single month and visiting the parks with our two girls who were much younger at the time. And when we got back, it was always the questions from friends and all. They're going to go, where do they stay? What do they eat? How do they save money? And I had a background in podcasting as a producer for my brother in the basketball space for many, many years. And so I was like, you know what? Maybe we start a Disney podcast. There weren't as many then as there are now, but there was still a good handful. And I remember, listening to shows like The Diz back then and Lou Mangello, of course, and WDW Radio, and being like, hey, maybe there's a space that we could do this as well. So we started, we hit record and we started talking about our trips and our real life experiences down there. And that's kind of what has blossomed in now to, 9 years, 2 episodes a week. And it's everything from, our trip reviews to top 10 lists, to games we kind of come up with and play on the show, listener input, things like that. And then that's blossomed into social media community, a little bit of a YouTube channel. We try and put some stuff on every now and then. Yeah. But it's been quite a awesome journey, and it's something that we both love. We both work full-time jobs. I'd say regular, but they're not really that regular. So this is kind of part hobby and part way of figuring out how we can do more Disney.
I was about to say, your podcast, your community, and now on social media, it's more than just like, tips, hacks, itineraries, right? And you're building a really strong community because of that, because of going a little deeper. What made you want to build that sort of community around Disney beyond just the parks?
Well, there's a lot of shows, there's a lot of channels, the vloggers, podcasters, everybody that does the tips, the tricks, the itineraries really, really well. That's what's in their wheelhouse. That's what they love, and that's what they're good at. And for us, it was more about almost, kind of the reality TV angle, I would say, of just let's go, let's experience, and then let's share about it. And within that, we hope that people will find tips and tricks and itineraries. And we certainly have some of those episodes, but we try and really base it off where the listener becomes part of our family and our community as though they were friends of ours. Your friends well. So if you're looking to eat at a certain type of restaurant, you might know which friends are more the foodies, which ones aren't. So you're going to go to the foodies. So we want people to get to know Rhonda and I really well, so they understand that this is all coming from our point of view and our opinions. We're not you have to do it this way to enjoy it type of podcast.
Right.
We're more of a, hey, you guys know us now. This is how we did it. This is what we enjoyed and we didn't enjoy. Therefore, hopefully you can base your own opinion off of that. I hate pickles more than anything in the world. Our listeners know that. So if I'm doing a review that has something pickle related, I'm not there saying shake. This is a bad, yeah, exactly. The pickle shake. I'm not going to say this is a bad item. I'm going to simply say, with my disdain for pickles, this is something that I did not enjoy because of that. Sure. But if you love pickles, like my wife does, she tried it. Here's her opinion on it. Now you can form your own. And that's kind of what we started to turn it into. We started the show with notes that were pages after pages after pages, and it's not that the show was scripted, but it had a very, very certain path that we followed. Mm-hmm. And what we found is that people enjoyed when we went off of that path.
Right.
And when it was more about bullet points than it was about that, kind of air quote script. And so we started to just come back and share our experiences as we did them, and hope that people get something out of that.
Right.
And making sure that we're doing the things that we feel the average park guest will do a lot of the time, because so many of our listeners, they don't get to go as often as you and I get to go to Disney, right? And so Rhonda has always said this. She's like, you know what? Sometimes we'll waste our money so you don't have to. Because if it's that once in a lifetime, once in a year, whatever it may be, trip for them, all of a sudden a $200 meal, that's a lot out of their budget. So if we have an opportunity to give our opinion on that, and then again, they can form their own decision on whether they want to do something like that or not, after hours party, a certain hotel, whatever it may be. We want to save folks money, and we want to make sure that they can have the best time at Disney possible by shared experiences, which just happen to come from us.
Right. And I want to emphasize the point that you wanted to make it feel like, basically the listener is getting to know you, getting to sit down with you. And I think that's the one big thing that struck me first when I first started listening to you and Rhonda, was like, it really just, I listen to podcasts in the car, but if I closed my eyes and I was sitting on the couch, I felt like I was just sitting with you and Rhonda and entering the conversation, which is a beautiful thing, especially in the world where, AI is starting to dominate everything, right?
Yeah.
That personality, that being personable to your listeners is so big. But let's go ahead and flip more towards Disney as a destination. So my listeners, and I'm sure your listeners as well, so many Disney guests that love to go to the parks, they would describe Disneyland, Disney World, any Disney park as some sort of escape from the stresses of everyday life.
Yeah.
You've talked about Disney as being something much deeper than just an escape. And I think this will resonate with both of our audiences. So how do you describe what Disney actually does for people emotionally?
I think it gives you permission to reconnect with your childhood, for one, with joy, with things that you don't necessarily get in everyday life, and that is through, look, everybody is familiar with the Disney brand, Disney characters.
Of course.
You may not be a fan or not, but you're familiar with them. And so there's a certain level of that nostalgia, of that comfort. A lot of folks that are, your age and my age, because I know I'm a little bit older now, we maybe grew up going to Disney, whether it was once or 100 times. So, there are those memories. And I feel like, and again, Rhonda always says this, it's the place that she can go be a kid again. It's like the old Toys R Us kid slogan, It's one place where I think most folks can go and be themselves and be completely comfortable. Just being that, getting excited about seeing a character, getting excited about a certain ride, a connection that you make with movies or whatever it may be that you grew up on. And so I think that helps a lot. And we use it kind of as a temporary escape from our busy lives, but we also use it as more of a reset, because I feel like escape kind of means you're avoiding something.
Right.
Whereas a reset is like a recharge. It's something that hopefully gives you more life so that when you do get back to the real world at home and your job and your family and, kids and all this stuff, you feel reset. You're not just forgetting about it and then you get back and everything's piling back on. So, we combine it with work, and I can use air quotes for work because it never feels like it when we're down there,
right.
Gathering content or doing things for the podcast. But we certainly are able to use it as, times that we can set everything aside. I could say, Flight of Passage, for example. There's something I do now anytime I ride Flight of Passage, which is barely watch the screen in front of me. What I love to see is watch the people around me, and you can tell who is doing it for the first time. Yeah. And you can see the emotion in them. You can see the joy in them. And you can tell for that moment, it's kind of a temporary escape. They're going to walk out of that ride and they may still be checking their emails on work stuff or whatever it may be, or they got text messages. But in that moment, they have a chance to kind of just truly be immersed and be in the reality of that ride and set everything else aside. And with as crazy as the world is and everything going on and how busy life is and everything around us, sometimes you need that. And so, I think of that as being like a 3-minute reset as opposed to an escape, because you come out of there and you feel better about everything, and sometimes that helps you tackle the daily tasks and all of life.
That big emphasis on the healthy reset versus just escaping something is really profound. And I want to emphasize that for, both of our listeners, because there's a big difference clearly, and you beautifully outlined that, which is big. And there's, like you said, a difference between coming back from a trip feeling recharged and ready to take on, the normal, mundane, everyday tasks versus avoiding and then coming back from your trip and then feeling like, oh, great, it's time to get back to things. Or you're dead tired and you're like, oh, great, now I have to get back to this.
Right.
So that distinction is huge, and knowing how to go about doing that at Disney is big, which is, I can imagine, also another reason why your podcast exists. It's not just tips and tricks. It goes a lot deeper than that, right?
Yeah, it definitely does. And, and that's why I absolutely love what you're doing from a physical and mental standpoint. Really heavy on the physical is, you should not come back from a vacation and need a vacation. And Disney is one of those destinations that can happen a lot because it is very physically tasking. It can be very mentally taxing. So, I think knowing how to handle your trip and the environment around you while you're there can make life better when you get back, because, you don't want to get back and be like, man, I need a week off to do nothing and recharge. Like, well, what were you doing all last week at Disney? So... I love what you're doing with that aspect of things. I think it's so important.
Yeah. Thank you. Seriously. It's an important voice to have. And I appreciate that you point that out.
Yeah, of course, man.
So my audience tends to be mostly like parents and families who are planning their Disney trips. Moving on, like, what do you think people miss the most about a Disney trip when they're too physically or mentally burnt out, since you mentioned it?
The little moments. And honestly, I would say the moments that matter the most. Because you're going to constantly look, you need to be on your phone at Disney. You need to plan. You need to know how to adjust. You need to be able to walk. You got to deal with the heat. You got to deal with little rest. You got to deal with a diet that maybe you're not used to. Mm-hmm. You get to Disney and all of a sudden you're maybe eating foods all week that you don't eat all the time at home, so there's so much going on that if you just allow it, I think, to overwhelm you, you're going to miss out on the moments that are really, really special. because you're so focused on all of that. You're focused on where you're eating next and what you're eating, on how you can get to this ride quickly, how you can maximize, just say you purchased Lightning Lane Multipass or whatever it may be. I, with the animation courtyard that's just opened at Hollywood Studios, and there's some of these roaming characters. And I don't know if you've seen the clip that's going around of Rapunzel playing Duck, Duck, Goose with kids, right?
Huge. That's so awesome.
That's what you're going to miss if you are so burnt out and you're so focused on only getting everything you can out of the money that you spent. And I'll tell you, those kids that are sitting around playing Duck, Duck, Goose with Rapunzel, when they get back and their friends are like, hey, what'd you do at Disney? That's going to come up before probably Rise of the Resistance or, a meal that they had or whatever it may be. It's the moments that you just stop and you kind of take everything in. And you're fully present around your family, your friends, whoever you may be with, because those are, again, you know what? Rise of Resistance is going to be there for a long time, right?
Right.
Rapunzel may be playing Duck, Duck, Goose with your kid is not. One of my favorite memories ever. Yeah. This would have been, I think it was about 9 or 10 years ago now. My wife and I and our 2 girls, so they would have been about 6 and 8 at the time. We were going to head down to Disney for spring break. My parents were coming down, and my brother and his 3 kids were coming. So, big family vacation, big week at Disney. I can't tell you what we did there. I can't tell you what rides we did. I can't tell you what I ate. What I can tell you about was when we didn't get into the show we thought we were going to for Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular. And so we had to wait in the queue and wait for the next show. And to entertain the kids, my brother had a great idea of, I got this cup of water. Let's see which kid can hold it on top of their head and balance it for the longest. And those 5 kids had more fun doing that than almost anything else we did that week. And if we had been so focused and going, hey, we missed that show, we can't stand in a line for 20 minutes. There's other stuff to do. We got to get over to this and this and this.
Right.
And we hadn't taken the time to slow down and just be present and be with each other and put our phones away and enjoy a bunch of, 4 to 8 year old kids balancing water on their heads. Like, those are the moments that you're going to remember the most in the end. And those are the ones that are so hard to recreate, especially as your kids get older.
Right.
So it's just, when you're burnt out, I just think you miss some of the most important stuff on your trip. And you miss the people you're with, really.
Yeah. Yeah, to really drive home the point, I really want to share this story because it's now become one of my top 5 favorite Disney moments ever. And it's all a product of being present. Yeah. So as you know, Jeremy, I was at Disneyland last week. And we used to go to Disneyland all the time. But now it's like maybe once a year we can go because now we're living out in Orlando. But needless to say, we had purchased Lightning Lane Multipass, and we had a Lightning Lane reserved to ride Incredicoaster. And we were like, okay, it'd be cool if, we can at least get to ride it maybe like towards the end of the day when the lights or when the sun's going down, the lights are up in the ride. And to our luck, the ride itself was shut down for whatever reason for most of the day, which is a bummer. But we were like, okay, that's cool. We'll just figure out what to do. We'll find something more fun to do and then come back later when hopefully it opens. Well, it opened, I want to say it opened closer to like 9 or 9:30, which I was like, okay, that's fine. But we also wanted to watch World of Color, right? We're type A people. We wanted to plan, make sure we can ride and watch the show at the same time. But we had decided, okay, why don't we ride this ride because we haven't ridden it in a long time. Both World of Color and Incredicoaster will be there when we come back. Let's ride the ride first and then just kind of see what happens. Let's be present in the moment and ride the ride, ride the wave to see how the rest of this night goes. So we get in line to ride Incredicoaster. Right as the countdown goes off for the launch sequence for the ride, the World of Color pre-show starts going off.
Oh.
So imagine sitting there on the water, looking to your right, hearing dash countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And then the pre-show starts going off. The water goes up, the color's up. It's a beautiful moment. And like that would have never happened had we just not been present and been like, okay, let's go with it and see what happens.
Yeah.
But the story doesn't end there, because as we rode the ride, of course, the pre-show finished up. We got off the ride. Because the pre-show was on, photos wouldn't be taken of the ride. So we didn't get our photo pass photos, which was a bummer. And we're like, that's okay. We were bummed, but it's fine, right? We ended up walking back to our room at the Pixar Place Hotel. And right as we walked in, we pulled back the curtains only to find out that the actual World of Color show was finishing up the last 15 minutes. So we got to watch the rest of World of Color from our room.
Oh, man.
Just sitting on the bed, like just watching everything happen. And it was a moment where I looked at my wife and I was like, I don't know if we'll ever have this moment again.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a very like once in a lifetime moment. And again, that wouldn't have happened had we not been just present and been flexible to just ride the wave. It was great.
Yeah. And you can't plan that. Like
No.
there's almost no way to plan that. And if you try to plan it, 99 out of 100 times, it's not going to go to plan. You're going to be disappointed. I love that. Those are the moments that happen that are just real. They're authentic, and you can't put them on any itinerary. We always say, like, don't let the success or the joy or whatever of your vacation be determined by a checklist. Let it kind of be determined by the memories. You should have that checklist. You could have on the checklist, like, hey, I want to ride this. I want to eat this, and I want to see this show and whatever. And that's cool. But you should never come back and be like, somebody said, how was your trip? We didn't get to ride in Credit Coaster. Like, okay. But what was the rest of the, like, if that's what you're leading with, then you're going to set yourself up for disappointment every single time, so have the checklist, but be flexible with it, and don't let your vacation be determined on what you actually get to tick off. Let it be determined by those moments that you just shared with us, which again, now, is one of your favorite moments ever. Like, I love hearing it. Like, I get chills now hearing you tell that story. It's so cool.
Yeah. Thank you. To move forward, I want to go into something a little bit different. So when I work with my clients, one of the biggest things I like to stress with them, especially when it comes to being consistent, starting new habits, a lot of them aren't exercising as regularly. So even just getting on the train of exercising regularly can be a challenge in and of itself. But one of the things that I really emphasize with them is finding your true why, because your true why is really the reason that you'll start and continue for an indefinite amount of time. A lot of creators in this space, a lot of people that start to get fit tend to burn out because they lose that why. That's that fire passion that really gets them. How have you in your content creation time, how have you protected your passion for what you do so that it still feels meaningful, almost 10 years out, rather than just it feeling like a job?
Yeah. One thing, like the podcast isn't our life. Our life is the podcast, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, we don't let our happiness and our joy and all of that be determined by the podcast. We kind of let our lives flow into the podcast in that way. And we try to constantly evolve, whether it's from a creative side. If there is something we're doing that we're starting to feel burnout on, then we stop doing it, and that's where it kind of goes back. Like, the podcast isn't our life. We're not going to do it if we don't enjoy it. Example, we had a Patreon group a couple years ago, and we, and myself really, because, I lead most of this because my wife's off working, 12-hour days as a hairdresser on her feet. So, I'm a lot of the back end and coming up with some of this, and I wasn't enjoying doing it anymore. And, we still had people that were subscribing, and we had people that were paying us money every month. And I could have sat back and said, you know what? People aren't really dropping off. We're giving them the bare minimum. It's working, and we're still getting some income from it. But one, I didn't enjoy it. So every time something came up, we were going to do a live stream, I just dreaded it all day long. And that was taking away from my my life. That was taken away from my energy. That was taken away from my why. Also, I'm just not that type of person. I don't want to sit back and collect money on things that I'm promising but not delivering on. So I didn't want people to be paying us for something that we weren't putting our full effort into. And so we stopped it. And now here, that was 2 years ago, I'm getting ready to relaunch it again on Monday, June 1st, because
That's
I
awesome.
feel an energy to do it again. And creatively, I have some new ideas, and, we've grown in the past 2 years. Technologies have grown in the past 2 years. So we constantly try and do those things. As far as not burning out and kind of keeping our why going all the time, because, we're 2 hours away. So we're not local, but we're there a lot. We tend to be there twice a month, at least 2 different weekends every month. We're always staying at least one night. We're not very much day trip people. We don't like to drive the 2 hours, do stuff, and drive home. Like, we want the full experience when we go. And we also know our listeners, want that as well. Like, a lot of our listeners aren't 2 hours away or locals. So they want to know what it's like to be in the parks all day and then go stay at a Disney resort or off property at night. So, when we go, though, we try to do new things still, which there are plenty of new things still to do. We don't often let what's new or exciting dictate everything that we do, because I think that's an easy way to get burnout. When, like, I don't like having to do something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like being told you have to go try these new things. A lot of times I want to. Like this past weekend, we did Rock and Roller Coaster during the pass holder preview. We rode Smuggler's Run because they had the updates on the days that we were there. But that was more out of the fact that it was convenient. It wasn't like, hey, we have to be there to do these things. Because, again, the average listener isn't, so they want to hear what it's really like. And I think for, a lot of podcasters and vloggers and bloggers, being first is what works for them. That's their moneymaker. That's what drives their traffic. And they do a really great job of it. We're not first people. And if we are there for something, we're not like first. We just might be there on an opening day, and a lot of it is out of the love for it. We were there opening day of Galaxy's Edge, and then a couple months later, opening day of Rise of Resistance, and for that, it was more about us being there for the community and sharing that experience than it was trying to be first and get clicks. It's just not how we choose to operate, because we want to try and be authentic in that manner. And again, other folks do it and they do it really well. And so we're going to leave it to them, but constantly kind of reevaluating what we're doing and trying not to get burnout. We've gotten away from it, and I need to re-implement it with Rhonda when we go. We did a lot with the kids when they were coming with us all the time, which sadly they don't anymore because we burnt them out. Funny enough. I should have told myself this years ago when we were burning the kids out and dragging them down there every weekend. Yes, definitely. We used to do a Disney first every single time, and it could be the smallest thing. One of my favorite Disney first, my daughter Kaylin and I, we had rode Rock and Roller Coaster back when it was Aerosmith several times, but all of a sudden we were in the first row, and we had never ridden in the first row, and it was exciting. And I have this picture. It's probably actually hanging up in this office somewhere, and it's Kaylin and I like taking a selfie with the number one on the ground, and like that was our Disney first for that trip. And that made it super exciting, so it's something that Rhonda and I need to get back into, but I think it's just trying to evolve. And when something starts to feel heavy, we stop doing it, or we change it up, or we adjust it. It's the reason we don't have a very active YouTube channel, because I hate editing long videos. And
tell me about
so I'm not going to do them, I'm not going to. And we could, if we had started on YouTube 10 years ago when we started this podcast, and if I had put as much effort into YouTube as I was everything else, we could probably be making pretty good money on YouTube. Sure. But I hated doing it, and I still hate doing it. And so I'm not going to do it, because at this point, keeping my why and not being burnout is more important than YouTube paying me a couple bucks every month, pretty much.
Yeah, I love that. I just want to emphasize 3 points from everything that you talked about so eloquently. So first, don't always try new things, because that's a surefire way of burning out. Let me make sure I want to make sure I heard that correctly, because and again, it makes a lot of sense. You can apply, this is going to sound a little very meta, but you can apply that at the parks. Every time you go to a trip, you don't always have to try the newest thing every single time. It works for some people. It honestly doesn't work for the majority of people. Yeah. Surefire way to not just burn out, but to get stressed, and stress can translate to more pain, more soreness. So like to get into my audience as well, this applies to you, to get a little meta into that, the same thing can apply to when you're trying a new exercise routine. You don't always have to try the new thing that you see on social media. You don't always have to use the new equipment at the gym. Honestly, tried and true is the most of the time the best way to go. Yes, some new things every now and then are going to be good for your body. And some firsts here and there are going to be great to, vary it up for your own body. But always doing something new is another surefire way to get burnt out. Yeah. Then building your life around your passion as opposed to having your passion dictate your life, another huge thing, because that relates to your why, right? Yeah. You have your why, you have the life you want to build, whether or not that's through content creation like you, Jeremy, or the life that you want to build as a young mother that wants to stay strong and confident in her own body as she's getting to the next few decades of her life, and wanting to avoid what's happening with her aunt who is dealing with a heart attack, right? These are the stories that I hear personally from clients and from prospective clients. But like building your life around that sort of passion and that why is much more important than simply saying, hey, I have to go to the gym. I have to do this. Yeah. Because again, that's just another recipe for burnout. And then again, to drive it home, figuring out that why so that you can stay in the game for long enough is so important in the content creation world, because it's really about time in the game. It's like the stock market. Time in the game is what matters at this point. Time in the game in terms of showing up for your own health is what matters, because that's what's going to drive you towards, again, those next few decades, to stay strong, to see if your eventual grandkids and pick them up while you go to meet Mickey for their first time and be present for that moment, right? Yes. So, dude, these moments, these things are so huge. So I love the talking points that you just came up with.
Yeah, and my brother, Alan Stein Jr., who's a keynote speaker, speaks for some of the biggest companies in the world. I mean, he didn't come up with this, but I don't know where else it came from, but I hear him say all the time, find what you're good at, find what you love, and wherever those two things intersect, like that's what you should be doing. And so that's what my wife and I are trying to do with our life. She's good at hair. She loves doing hair, so she does hair. I love podcasting and marketing, which I do for my brother, and social media, and I'm good at it, so those two things intersected. So that's what I'm doing. 10 years ago, I got out of the corporate office game and started my own business because I hated getting in a car and driving an hour every morning and sitting in a cubicle from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And I know for a lot of people, that is what they have to do. That's what they have to do to sustain life, to pay for their family, to afford things. But then find a hobby, find something you love, find something you're good at where those intersect, and do that as a hobby. And that might be fitness, that might be art, or, making music, or just doing a podcast that starts as a hobby and then maybe it blossoms into something else, the way that we've been, fortunate enough to have it do. So, yeah, man, I love all this stuff, and doing all this work for my brother, it seeps into my brain every day, because I spend so much time listening to everything that he tells these organizations and these companies and these people. So it's so funny. I'll say things and I'm like, oh, where did that come from? It's like, oh yeah, it came from my brother. That's just, it's ingrained in me now. And I've learned so much from him over the past decade, to make my life better.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about showing up for yourself. My audience is very much made of those parents who are juggling work, taking care of the kids, cleaning up the house, and then trying to take care of themselves on the back end. Those types of people often tend to feel guilty for prioritizing themselves because they spend so much time prioritizing everyone else in their family.
Yeah.
And that, that can show up as prioritizing themselves for just taking care of themselves, their own health and wellness. But what would you say to someone who mentally they feel like they're running on empty and they don't feel like they're allowing themselves to invest in their own self?
This is another one I'm going to take from my brother. You can't pour from an empty cup. Like if you aren't physically, mentally, emotionally sound, you're not going to be able to provide for other people. If you're burnt out, you're not going to be able to provide for other people. It's really that plain and simple. Like you have to take care of yourself first to take care of those others and those, people around you. It's really, I hate to say as simple as that. And it's, I think it's showing up for people. I've learned recently to show up for people, not to make these grand gestures, cause I used to think that was kind of being there for someone or helping someone or showing love was like, you got to do the big things. You got to make these grand gestures, but it's more about consistency, and just being there, and I'm the planner, out of Rhonda and I. So I'm the one that's been planning these trips now for 20 years, cause we've been going since, I moved down to Florida 21 years ago and we had the kids 18 years ago. We started having kids, so I've been the one who has always planned. I've been the one who has, gotten to a trip and felt burnt out, and then been volatile and angry the whole trip when things didn't go as planned, and for the guy that had to always have control and always make those plans, I'd get mad at them when my plans didn't go accordingly, and that's just going to put stress on everyone in the family, not just you, but everyone else. And so, yeah, man, you got to take care of yourself first if you want to take care of other people.
I like the fact that you mentioned that basically small, consistent action compounds over time. Showing up for someone doesn't necessarily mean one grand gesture. Although that's nice, it's not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. But those small, consistent actions that you do to help, whatever it is what compounds over time. As long as you're consistent with them, that's huge.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
You've talked about the idea, this is something that you've talked about, and we're going to talk about this later about your book, but you've talked about the idea of turning pain into purpose. For someone who feels like their struggles are far too personal or like messy to ever be useful for someone else, how can you help them see it differently? How can you help them show up in their own life so that they can take care of themselves?
Yeah, I mean, and I know we'll dive into this a little bit more when we talk about the book and all that I wrote, but the big thing is those folks are not alone. I think everybody that feels a certain pain or struggle, who's overwhelmed, who's burnt out, it's very easy to feel like you're the only one. So usually I think finding an outlet, finding, other folks like that. And that's where the online community really is amazing. I can tell you right now, it's been so much easier for me to share certain things over social media and all than it is with people that are right in my life, because I found some communities that understand, that maybe are going through the same type of pain or struggles or they're burnout or whatever it may be. So I think it's doing that. Knowing that honesty is one thing I've really learned about lately, and being honest, is so freeing. Being honest with everything that I do in my life over the past couple of years has been the number one thing that has changed my life, and everyone that I was afraid of being honest with because I thought I would, and maybe they'd head the other direction or whatever, 99% of them are still here. And for the 1% that left, see you later. Like
they
you
probably weren't meant to be there, right?
Not meant to be there. So it's that honesty. It's being transparent. Again, it's something that we've always done on the podcast. We've talked about when maybe personal and life problems have come up. We have talked about the joys and the pains of raising two girls, from zero and being born and going to Disney all the way up to our daughter Lacey's going to be 16 in July. Our daughter Kaylin, who just graduated last week, is 18. So I think it's just sharing and being open and vulnerable that really truly helps. And taking those things and turning them into some type of purpose, knowing that they can help other people. Because I think for a lot of folks, serving other people is something that can bring you a lot of joy, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons. You can do it for the wrong reasons and it could still bring you joy, but when you're doing it for the right reasons, when you're doing it to help other people, again, we do this podcast to hopefully help other people. And right. This is on such a low level, but like the pains that we deal with at Disney because the lines were so long or this hotel off property wasn't great. We turn those into the purpose of helping other people so they don't have to experience those same things. So I know that's not on like this high level of pain and struggles that a lot of people have, but it's the best example I can kind of just give to say, take something that you've learned and apply it to others and serve them and help them. And that'll help you in the long run. Like it brings me so much joy now knowing, when I get that email from a family that says, hey, we found your podcast. We were planning our first trip ever. We just got back and we had the best time ever because of this, and this that we heard you talk about. Like that brings me so much joy. And I could read those emails, those reviews, whatever it may be forever, and that helps give me purpose. Yeah. I don't want it to give me, I never want those to validate me, but sometimes it's nice to see that what you're doing is helping somebody else and it might be making a difference. Because I know for a lot of us, we wouldn't do these things if they just fell on deaf ears. So getting that type of response back is very much our purpose in everything that we do.
That's huge. And I want to drive home another point that you're, again, covering so well is whatever struggle that you are going through, you really are not alone. And it's really important to have that community that you can be open with so that you will feel free to not only be your true self, but also feel free and allow yourself to get through the challenge that you are dealing with. Because otherwise you'll just feel trapped. Yeah. Right. And that is in my own Disney Prep Rehab and Strengthening program where I'm working with one-on-one clients. One of the things that I focus on is building that community. So we have our own private community between myself and my clients where we can post our wins. We can be honest and post our struggles. That way we know that we are not alone because we really aren't. And again, the more honest you are with not just yourself, but with the community that you trust, the more likely you are to feel free and allow yourself the permission to work through that struggle. Otherwise, you just get trapped. Yeah. So that's awesome, man.
That community is so big. And, like you said, with your clients is that all of them can be in that community and know they have at least one thing in common. And that's something I love about the Disney community, especially with a lot of the, negativity that can be spread about Disney adults and whatever it may be, which I really just think is spread by people who don't understand what Disney really is. But I know I could sit in a room of a bunch of Disney fans, I could sit in Momentum, and know that every single person in that room probably gets emotional when they see Happily Ever After. And that might just be the one thing that we start off, but that's kind of that icebreaker. And that's that point where you all start to connect. And then you start to find out you have so many other things maybe in common. And then your little subgroups and communities form. But at least you start off with that one thing. Like we're all here because we love Disney, or, we're all here because we love fitness, or we want to improve our health and our lifestyle, or lose weight, or whatever it may be more mobile, not be burnout after the parks, you start with that one thing. And that's how you build a community.
For sure. Let's now shift topics and go into your book, which you just recently published. And I had just purchased my copy, so I'm really, really excited to receive it. But your book is called Still Loud, Now Clear. Such a cool name, by the way.
Thank you.
Without giving everything away, what is the book about, and who is it written for? Who is your audience?
So the book is about my journey into sobriety through lyrics and music that helped me get there. Like that would kind of be a little bit of the elevator pitch. But beyond that, it's about mental health. It's about finding your identity. It's about rebuilding your life, which I've had to do in the past 2 years since I decided to get sober. And when I originally was writing the book, it was for me. And that was kind of it. It was kind of my therapy session. I had this idea. I had this amazing moment about 15 months into my sobriety that I wrote a blog about. Like it just hit me. And my wife looked at me and was like, hey, that was pretty good. Like you should write a book. And I was like, challenge accepted, and I had met wonderful folks like you who were writing a book, And so I was like, okay, I'll write a book. And it was really about me and all. And then I realized, this is going to help other people that are struggling with alcoholism. And then I was like, this will help people that are struggling with any addiction. And then I realized this will also help people understand if they have a loved one that is struggling with these things. So this is for also not just the person that might be struggling with addiction, but the people that love them, their spouse, their kids, their parents, their friends and family, to hopefully help those people understand a little bit more what goes on kind of inside the mind of someone who is truly struggling, which I did for 25 years until I made the decision to get sober. And so it's kind of for everybody. It mostly focuses on the first 18 months of my journey before I manned up and started going through the real work and doing steps and being in recovery. And I kind of white knuckled my way through that first year and a half. But it also goes back into my childhood and kind of looks at where I think certain things came from and again, trying to find myself as at that, I got sober when I was 44 years old, got 2 teenage kids, been married for almost 20 years at the time. Like you want to talk about rebuilding your life. That's what I had to do. And so that's really what the book is about.
I was about to say, just the topic of sobriety, recovery, addiction, those are heavy topics. Let's be real. Yeah. But knowing the way you describe and knowing how you just described everything just now, but also knowing how you've posted on social media and talked about things, you don't make it sound heavy, right? You make it sound more hopeful, which is very profound for any readers or anyone that's interested in purchasing the book. How did you find that voice? Because clearly, you just described you were struggling for 18 months and white knuckling it. There had to have been a moment, or maybe there wasn't, and it kind of just came about. Like how did you find that sort of voice to write the book like the way it is?
Well, I think pain and struggle and hope can coexist. They don't have to be separate from each other. I think humor can exist within struggle and pain. I tend to sometimes have a dark sense of humor. Through my years of being an active alcoholic, I was still the one that painted on the happy face and the smiling face and cracked the jokes. And that was just kind of my mask to cover up what was really going on underneath. But it kind of translated into the same thing, of trying to find humor and hope in all the pain and the struggle. And it kind of just came out that way. And then when I started kind of just thinking back, because here's the thing on the surface, and even you can read the book, I didn't have this crazy traumatic life, I didn't have loss throughout my life, like major loss. I had a couple that I highlight in the book that certainly shaped who I became and all. But, when you look at a lot of people and you hear their stories, you're just like, wow, I can't ever imagine that. And, there's so much to be learned from that because those people found hope in absolute, horrific lives and all. Mine is, I think, much more of that story that people can a lot of times relate to, because I had both parents growing up the whole time, so I didn't come from a divorced home. I got everything I needed. I've always had a wonderful friend circle. I've been married for 20 years now. I've got 2 wonderful kids, but underneath I was absolutely struggling. And so it's trying to bring that to light. Like, I want to kind of break some of the stigma of what an alcoholic looks like. Now, right now I might look like one, like I got tattoos and a scraggly beard and all that. But, I think a lot of people think that when they think of alcoholic, in the picture that TV and movie portrays is the person that loses everything, the unkept person who's dirty and always has a bottle in their hand and is like living under a bridge, not the person who has hope and still laughs and still loves their life and is learning how to rebuild it and love it even more. And so that's what I really wanted to tell with the story, was to kind of be that, I was a very functioning alcoholic. I mean, there's stuff in that book that my wife reads and she's like, I was sitting next to you on the couch for 20 years and I didn't know any of this was going on, And so it's hopefully shedding some light on that. Cause I can tell you, man, we're a pretty happy and joyous bunch when you get to know us, those of us that have kind of found our path and are working through recovery and just being honest. And, that's where it all started, with the honesty, like I mentioned before. And I just wanted to be honest. I don't have anything to hide. And like we were just talking about, if I said something in that book that turned somebody off or a friend of mine, then how long was that ever really going to last? So,
right.
And most everybody stuck around, and, it's another one of those things, the same way I feel when I get a message saying, hey, we listened to your podcast. We went into this restaurant and we loved it. It was a highlight of our trip. I get the same thing if I get a message and someone says, man, my husband or my wife or something is struggling with this and I didn't know how they felt, and now I do. Or, hey, Jeremy, I'm struggling with this and I thought I was the only one who thought these things, and you know what? You're not. So, I just wanted to show that there's that light at the end of the tunnel and there's a lot of hope, because on day one, there's none of that. It is the most down and depressed and scared I've ever been in my entire life was day one, and now I'm on day 808, and it's been quite a journey. So I just wanted to be able to share it with other people and hope that it helps them.
Man, that's so inspiring. And I just want to emphasize that perspective, not only of being the high functioning or being the former high functioning alcoholic, that relates to, I think, way more people than we could both imagine, but also being the person that you are, the Disney aficionado, just a very unique perspective that can connect to such a deep niche, not just the ones that are struggling with addiction. Huge story that I'm really excited to dig into in terms of reading the book. So
I can't wait, man.
I can't, dude. I can't either. So last question, and I think I'm going to start asking all my guests this moving forward, but what does it mean for you to be fit for the magic?
Again, it's very easy for me to relate it to Disney specifically, but, I think magic and Disney go together, but magic could mean life. It could mean whatever.
Yeah.
And, that's being physically fit. So like you mentioned earlier, I want to play with I want to take my grandkids to Disney one day, which means that I got to be healthy enough for that. I got to still be alive and around, so I think it's being physically fit. It's being mentally fit. So, all these things we talked about of how, learning how to adjust when you're feeling burnout, finding your why, finding your purpose, all of that. And, it's being emotionally fit as well, which something I have finally done since getting sober is that I can speak openly and transparent about everything to pretty much anyone. And that's improved my life and has made me kind of fit for all of that. And, the memories that I've been able to make in the past 2 years going to Disney, sober and going through the work and all, are so much clearer and important to me now than all the ones that I was trying to make before. And it's not living in the past and living in regret and all of that. You can start now. You can start today on the fitness, the emotion part, the mental part, and just continue moving forward. And so that's what I've been choosing to do. And that's kind of what I think it means. I think fit so often just gets associated with physical fitness.
Right.
And we don't talk enough about mental fitness and emotional fitness. And I hope that more people will start to do that and be more open and honest, because, struggling with those things, I don't think it makes you weak. Admitting your struggles is like the strongest thing in the world, and then changing them and doing something about it.
Yes.
Right now I am struggling with my fitness and my weight. It's something that I am starting to work on, because I'm unhappy with the way I am in certain ways. And so, I'm not going to worry about what I did in the past and yesterday and all that. And I'm going to focus on, being physically fit in the future, and just continue to work on my emotional and mental fitness as well.
Well, Jeremy, if you need help, I might know a guy.
I know. We got to chat for sure. We definitely got to chat.
But dude, that was really good. And that's the way you described everything, being fit for the magic, how it isn't just being physically fit. That's the thing that coincidentally is transforming my own practice as I move forward with my clients. Because it really isn't just being physically fit. Because like we talked about earlier, you need to find your why to be able to be consistent about being physically fit. And finding your why forces you to look deep within yourself. Are you mentally fit? Are you emotionally fit? Have you accepted your past and let go of what's unnecessary to you so you can move forward? Like, there are things that we just don't think about beyond okay, let's do 3 sets of 10 squats.
Right. Yeah.
Any AI learning language model can tell you, do this set of exercises. That's not what my practice is about. It's more about exactly what you said. Physically fit, mentally fit, emotionally fit. There's so much more to it. So I love your answer. So thank you.
Yeah, of course, man. Yeah. And again, I love what you're doing with all of this. It's so important. You could be the best shape in the world and get back from a Disney trip and be absolutely burnt out mentally. And then it's still like, okay, well, what was the point of all that? Sure, you did your 20,000 steps a day and you were okay at the end of the day, but you're miserable and you're burnout and you need a vacation after your vacation. So yeah, focus on all the other stuff too.
Jeremy, where can everybody find you? And more importantly, where can everybody purchase your book?
Yeah, so the podcast, you can find our website at mainstmagic.com. We are Main ST Magic out on social channels. And then we are on all the major podcasting platforms. We come out with brand new episodes every Tuesday and Friday if life is not getting in the way, which it seems to have lately, but we're kind of back on schedule. And then for the book, you can go to stillloudnowclear.com. You can purchase the book there. You can purchase the ebook. I've got both of those available. And then it's Louder Now Clear on Instagram, on Facebook and Twitter. And I try and post like daily videos and stuff that relate to all these, same things as well. So, give me a follow, hit me up on any of those channels. If anybody wants to take the discussion or whatever it may be further. And, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the platform.
Jeremy, thanks so much for coming on. This was such a pleasure. So I hope to see you at this year's upcoming Momentum with Lou.
You will.
Awesome, man. Well, take care.
All right, you too.
That's all for today's episode. If you are planning a trip and you're worried that your knees, your back, or even your stamina might let you down, I want you to consider checking out my Disney Prep Rehab and Strengthening program. This isn't just a workout plan. It's specifically designed to target the muscles you use in the parks for walking endurance, standing tolerance, and lifting mechanics for parents, and it lets you get strong long before you get to Orlando. If that sounds like what you need on your next trip, head over to the link in the show notes to schedule a discovery call. If you love what you hear and you want to hear more, I encourage you to head over to fitforthemagic.com, where you'll find your free guide, 15 must-have items for a pain-free Disney trip. And if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share it with anyone that might benefit from it. And of course, please leave a rating or a review in your favorite podcast app. if you enjoyed the show. This helps me a ton as I move forward with new episodes to come. I hope that you tune in to learn more about how to have a pain-free, soreness-free, and exhaustion-free vacation so that you can make magical memories with your loved ones.